The blue and red lights reflected off the water as I finished tying the final cleat hitch on my boat. Two officers approached down the wooden dock, their boots creating a steady rhythm against the planks. The taller one, Officer Martinez, cleared his throat and said with a professional tone, "Excuse me, sir. We received a call about trespassing and unauthorized docking at this marina." I raised an eyebrow, already knowing exactly who had dialed 911. Through my peripheral vision, I caught a glimpse of bleached blonde hair and crossed arms watching from the shoreline. Patricia Hendress, or as the neighborhood had come to call her, Karen. She stood there with a smug expression, probably thinking she had finally won our little war. Let me back up and explain how I ended up here, dealing with police officers on what should have been a peaceful Saturday afternoon. 3 months ago, I purchased a waterfront property in the Sunset Shores subdivision. What attracted me wasn't just the stunning view or the craftsman-style architecture. It was the unusual addition that came with the deed. A 51% ownership stake in the adjacent Sunset Marina. The previous owner, an elderly gentleman named Frank Morrison, had built the marina 40 years ago when this area was nothing but marshland and dreams. He maintained majority control even as the neighborhood developed around it, wisely protecting his investment through proper legal channels. When Frank passed away, his estate attorney contacted me with an offer I couldn't refuse. Patricia Hendrick had served as the HOA president for the past 7 years, ruling our little community with an iron fist wrapped in passive-aggressive newsletters. She had appointed herself as the unofficial marina gatekeeper, deciding who deserved access to the water and who didn't. Her power trips were legendary, from measuring grass height with a ruler to issuing violations for wind chimes that were too melodic. The trouble started. My first week in the neighborhood, I had barely finished unpacking when Patricia appeared at my door with a welcome basket and a 3-inch binder. She said with false sweetness dripping from every word, "Welcome to Sunset Shores. I've taken the liberty of highlighting the most important HOA rules for you. Pay special attention to sections 4 through 17 regarding watercraft regulations." I thanked her politely and set the binder aside, planning to review it later. That was my first mistake. Patricia expected immediate compliance and reverence for her authority. When I didn't attend the emergency HOA meeting she called to discuss new resident integration, she took it as a personal insult. The real conflict began when I brought my boat to the marina. It was a modest 24-foot cabin cruiser, nothing fancy but well-maintained and my pride and joy. As I backed my trailer down the launch ramp, Patricia materialized like a bureaucratic ghost. She announced with barely contained excitement, "Excuse me, you can't launch that here without proper HOA approval." I explained calmly that I owned the property at 47 Waterfront Drive, which included marina rights. Her face turned an interesting shade of purple as she sputtered, "That doesn't matter. All watercraft must be approved by the HOA board before entering our marina." That's when I dropped the first bombshell. I informed her with a slight smile. "Actually, Patricia, I don't just have marina rights. I own 51% of the marina itself. I bought it along with the Morrison property." The look on her face was priceless, but I should have known she wouldn't give up that easily. Over the next few weeks, Patricia launched a campaign that would have impressed a political strategist. She sent daily emails to the HOA mailing list, each one more dramatic than the last. "Unauthorized vessel threatens community standards," read one subject line. Another claimed, "Property values at risk from negligent boat owner." She organized spontaneous gatherings where residents just happened to walk by while I worked on my boat, shaking their heads and muttering about declining neighborhood standards. She filed formal complaints with the HOA board, the City Marina Commission, and even the Coast Guard Auxiliary. Each time I responded with copies of my deed and ownership documents, but Patricia remained undeterred. The harassment escalated when she started taking photos of my boat from various angles, claiming it violated HOA aesthetic guidelines. She measured the exact distance from the dock to prove I was 3 inches over some imaginary line. She even hired what she called an independent marine consultant, who turned out to be her nephew with a fishing license. Things reached a boiling point during the monthly HOA meeting. Patricia stood at the podium, gesturing dramatically at a PowerPoint presentation titled The Boat Problem, a clear and present danger to our community. She showed slide after slide of my boat from unflattering angles, complete with red arrows pointing to imaginary violations. When she finished her 45-minute presentation, I raised my hand and stood up. The room fell silent as I walked to the front, pulled out my phone, and connected it to the projector. I said with measured calm, "I'd like to share something with everyone." The screen displayed the original Marina deed and incorporation documents. I explained with the patience of a kindergarten teacher, "As you can see, the Marina exists as a separate legal entity from the HOA. The majority owner, which is now me, has full authority over slip assignments, boat approvals, and marina operations. The HOA has no jurisdiction over marina activities beyond what any property owner agreement allows." The room erupted in whispers. Several board members looked uncomfortable, realizing they might have been party to harassment of a property owner exercising legal rights. Patricia's face cycled through several colors before settling on an alarming crimson. She shrieked with a voice that could shatter glass. "This is impossible! I've managed this marina for 7 years. You can't just waltz in here and claim ownership," I replied with a slight shrug. "I didn't claim anything, Patricia. I bought it. Legal transfer of deed filed with the county. Would you like to see the tax records?" That's when Patricia made her biggest mistake. 2 days later, as I was returning from a morning cruise, I found the police waiting at the dock. She had actually called 911, claiming I was trespassing on HOA property and illegally mooring a vessel. Officer Martinez listened patiently as I explained the situation, showing him my documentation on my phone. His partner, Officer Chen, tried to hide a smirk as I scrolled through the ownership papers. Patricia stood nearby, arms crossed, tapping her foot impatiently. Officer Martinez turned to Patricia and said with professional restraint, "Ma'am, this gentleman owns the marina. He can't trespass on his own property." Patricia's voice rose an octave as she protested. "But the HOA has rules. We have standards. This is a violation of everything we stand for." Officer Chen stepped forward and said firmly, "Ma'am, calling 911 for a false emergency is a misdemeanor. You've wasted city resources for what appears to be a personal dispute." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood about Patricia's failed police call. Several marina slip renters approached me, sharing stories of her arbitrary rules and power plays. Tom Bradley from Unit 12 told me she had tried to ban his kayak for being too yellow. Sarah Chan from Unit 33 said Patricia had demanded a written essay about why she deserved a boat slip. I called an emergency meeting for all marina slip holders and interested residents. The community center was packed as I outlined my plans for the marina. I announced with genuine enthusiasm, "First, we're going to modernize the dock infrastructure. New cleats, better lighting, and actual safety equipment. Second, slip assignments will be based on availability and fair pricing, not on whether someone attends Patricia's book club." The crowd actually applauded. I continued with growing confidence. Third, we're implementing clear, reasonable rules. No more aesthetic committees or boat beauty contests. If your vessel is seaworthy and you're a respectful neighbor, you're welcome here. Patricia sat in the back row, her face a mask of fury. When I opened the floor for questions, she stood up and declared, venom in every word, "This is a coup. You're destroying everything that makes Sunset Shores special." An elderly resident named George stood up and said with quiet dignity, "Patricia, the only thing being destroyed is your stranglehold on this community. We're tired of living in fear of violation notices." The room erupted in agreement. Stories poured out about Patricia's reign of terror, the Great Garden Gnome Ban of 2019, the mailbox color war of 2020, and the infamous bird feeder prohibition that led to 3 families moving away. I let everyone speak their piece before returning to the podium. I said with careful emphasis, "Here's what's going to happen. The marina will operate independently of HOA oversight. I'm also implementing a strict anti-harassment policy. Anyone who attempts to intimidate or falsely report marina users will be permanently banned from the premises." Patricia's lawyer, a nervous man named Jeffrey Williams, whispered urgently in her ear. She ignored him and shouted with barely controlled rage, "You can't do this! I'll sue! I'll contact the state HOA board! I'll call the news!" Her outburst was interrupted by a motion from the HOA board itself. Vice President Michael Torres stood and said formally, "I move to hold a vote of no confidence in our current HOA president, based on misuse of authority and actions that have exposed our association to legal liability." The vote was swift and decisive. 17 in favor, 2 against, with 1 abstention from Patricia's sister. Patricia stood frozen as the results were announced. Michael Torres continued with visible relief. "Furthermore, I move to establish a formal separation between HOA governance and Marina operations, acknowledging Mr. Johnson's legal ownership and authority." That motion passed unanimously. Patricia grabbed her designer purse and stormed toward the exit, but not before turning back and hissing with pure malice, "This isn't over! You'll regret this." The next morning, I posted the new Marina rules. They were simple, fair, and focused on safety rather than aesthetics. I also installed a new sign at the Marina entrance, Sunset Marina, privately owned and operated. Slip rentals available to respectful community members. 2 weeks later, Patricia submitted an application for a boat slip. She had purchased a small sailboat, probably thinking she could force her way back into Marina politics. I reviewed her application carefully, noting her history of false police reports, harassment of Marina users, and the pending misdemeanor charge for misuse of emergency services. I stamped "denied" across the application and added a note. "Due to documented history of harassment and false reporting against Marina property, this application cannot be approved." This decision is final. When Patricia received the rejection, she appeared at the Marina office, her face contorted with rage. She screamed loud enough for half the neighborhood to hear, "You can't do this to me! I built this community! I am Sunset Shores!" I looked up from my paperwork and said with practiced calm, "Patricia, you're welcome to dock at the public marina 6 miles north. I hear they have an excellent HOA compliance program." The legal bills from her failed attempts to challenge my ownership eventually forced Patricia to sell her house. The last anyone heard, she had moved to a landlocked community in Arizona. Her final HOA meeting as a resident was memorable only for its brevity. She sat silently as the new board reversed dozens of her arbitrary rules. As for me, I spent the evening installing one final addition to the marina, a small, discreet sign at my personal slip that read, "Private slip, owner operated." The marina thrived under reasonable management. Families returned to the water. Children learned to fish from the docks. The sunset views were enjoyed without fear of violation notices. Patricia's 911 call had backfired spectacularly. Instead of driving me away, it had exposed her abuse of power to the entire community. The false report charge stuck, resulting in $3,000 in fines and 40 hours of community service. Her removal from the HOA board was unanimous and immediate. The local newspaper ran a story titled, "HOA President's Overreach Leads to Downfall," ensuring her professional reputation as a real estate agent took a significant hit. Patricia's final words, as she learned about the criminal charges and fines, were a strangled whisper. $3,000 for one phone call. Her attorney nodded grimly and reminded her she was lucky it wasn't worse.